Hi there, my name is Tom Bell, and welcome to my 5 Minute Friday videocast on the 16th of January. I am an author, a frustrated justice seeker, a former NHS whistleblower, and we'll talk briefly about that a bit more in a moment. And I'm now a full-time PhD student studying, of all things, ignorance and the role whistleblowing has to play in that. This week, a couple of things grabbed my eye this week. One of them was that something called the duty of candour was supposed to be discussed in Parliament on Wednesday. That discussion has now been moved to Monday. I know I'm a bit sad that I know these things, but it's been moved to Monday because there are some people that have issues with it, namely the security services, who are a bit worried that if a duty of candour comes in, a duty of candour meaning that they would have to tell the truth if they were asked a question, that might put them on the spot a bit. I guess that's understandable, isn't it? And also, I see that there's an MP, let me get his name right, a guy called Luke Meyer, who is trying to make it a criminal offence for MPs to lie. Good luck with that one, Luke. It's a fascinating idea, isn't it? But I'm not sure how far that's going to fly. I said I was going to touch briefly on my whistleblowing experience in the NHS. The reason for that is that the duty of candour is something very close to my heart. The duty of candour is going to be placed on public servants, public employees, senior leaders, directors, managers, etc., civil servants, MPs perhaps. And it's going to require them to tell the truth in situations where previously they may not have been so forthcoming. That's me being super diplomatic and polite. Now then, the issue is, as soon as you try to make a law about something, what you'll find is that those that the law was designed to affect will find a way around it. And I know this from my experience in the NHS. So let me bring this to life. One of the main reason I got into trouble in the NHS and ended up going to the regulator, the Care Quality Commission at the time, was that I used to work for an NHS trust up here in Cumbria. And my job was to go out and talk to, let's call them stakeholders, all the different interest parties around the patch. So, you had your GP practices, you had your voluntary services providing lots of support, you had patient advocacy bodies, you had housing associations, local authorities, public health, And the purpose of that role was to go out and talk to people about what it was that they really needed from the trust that I worked for and how the trust was doing in terms of providing what they needed. And take it from me, the results weren't always great. So what I used to do is go back into the trust with a monthly report, and I had a couple of colleagues I worked alongside, and we'd go back in with a monthly report, which had a mix of sort of the good, the bad, and everything in between in it. And there was also an annual report that we produced, which we produced twice, 2 years. And then something called the Fit and Proper Persons Test came into place it was November 2014. And literally 1 month before that came into place, my role and the role of my colleagues, they were shelved. And we were given some lame excuse about, the NHS trust needed to restructure and we were going to be absorbed into a communications department, communications and PR departments in the NHS generally being the communication of bullshit and nonsense. And so I wondered what was behind this. And now what had happened was the trust had realised that if a fit and proper persons test came in, one of the requirements of which was that directors would have to deal with issues that they were made aware of, and this arose, of course, from the Francis report a few years earlier, which explained that the tragedies that had unfolded at mid-staffs had been known about and people had tried to tell directors about them, but they hadn't been listened to. Directors had ignored them. So the fit and proper persons test was a way of saying, right, let's make sure that directors act on the information that they're given. Herein comes the problem. If you're going to be held accountable for information that you don't act on, the best way to deal with that is not to get the information. So my role was shelved and the role of my colleagues was shelved because we were essentially providing information to the trust, which was going to prove embarrassing because they would be found not to be acting on that information. I hope that makes sense. They were effectively shutting the letterbox. So we were the letterbox to the outside world. We were the people that were going out to lots of different people and saying, hey, tell us what you think. Tell us what you need from us. Tell us what you want. Tell us what we do well. Tell us what we don't do so well. Tell us where we could improve, all that stuff, And by doing that, we've made the trust vulnerable. But vulnerability is, in many respects, a good thing. And me, as I was a chartered marketer for many, many years, the things that people tell you, that's the gold dust, isn't it? That's where you can improve. So I was quite happy listening to where people told us we were going wrong because that's the opportunity they're giving you to improve. That's my slightly positive outlook on life, isn't it? Slightly bit naive, perhaps, in terms of public services, but there you go. So what the trust did was it said, well, goodness me, we can't deal with the stuff that Tom and his team are telling us. So the best way to deal with that now is to stop them letting us, is to stop them telling it. Yeah, let's cease their roles. Let's get rid of them. And what they did effectively was they closed our roles down. They got rid of the information that we had gathered over the last almost 3 years it was since the roles were in place. And they made sure that they could never be held accountable for sitting on information on which they hadn't acted by removing the information on which they hadn't acted. So it will be interesting to see how this duty of candour plays out, because I think, as I say, I think when you legislate for things, I think that can cause problems. I think organisations will find ways around that, just like the NHS Trust that I worked for found a way around it. So I watch this space with interest. And as I say, Luke, I wish you well in your efforts to make it illegal for MPs to tell lies. You will need a whole lot of luck with that one. On that note, as ever, stay safe, try and stay solvent even, and stay sane if you can. Ciao.